So what do you do now? Do you get to code in your work a lot?
Yeah, I'm a software engineer at Apple. I do code, but I would say, like we talked about previously, there's like several phases to software development, right? There's the design of it, there's the implementation of it, the coding of it, there's the testing, coding up the tests, or manually testing it. There's also analytics. There's also tuning. Obviously, each part of this has the idea of coding in it. Maybe sometimes not coding on a computer, but thinking about how you're about to code. So I do code at work, but I would say it's a really small part of my time. At least maybe just 20% of my time that I'm actually sitting down and writing stuff. And because 80% of the time I actually spend it on designing it, either alone or with my coworkers, thinking about the problem with other experts and trying to figure out what to code. And that's actually really important. I spend more time looking at the wall or looking at people than I do actually writing it, right? And that's because once you know how to solve a problem, the coding part becomes implementation. It just becomes, a little bit mechanical. There's still, problems that, within coding that you have to solve. But most of the time, at least in my case, like figuring out what to implement, it takes a bit more time. And then, moving on to implementation testing, like test writing, or manual testing. There's also analytics. So writing analytics code, for example, like once you deliver the product to your customers, how do you ensure beyond just, local testing that you've done at your desk, how do you ensure that whatever you develop and deliver to the end user, that they're actually using it in a way that fits your expectation? And whether there are bugs in the code that you later have to fix. And so, there's also a bit of coding on the analytics front so that you can get insight into your product, after it ships. And then analyzing the analytics part coming back in, and that part is not coding, but that informs what you will do next, what kind of things you will code next, right? That will inform, maybe just for an example, that might inform you that, you need to optimize performance on this part of the code, that you may need to tune, this policy that you have in your code. So that's that's what I do at work.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point to emphasize, or to, let people be aware of who might be new to coding, which is when you start learning how to code, you often focus on the syntax and how you write in this language, or, when they think about coding, it's like, okay, the act of, writing lines of programming language or something. But the reality of a job concerning coding is, it has a lot of teamwork and collaboration, and a lot of the work is done before the coding starts. The coding is the tool to, get to what you want done. But there's a lot of thinking involved first.
Yeah, and very much, like a language, right? We talk about coding languages, right? Very much like a language. Of course, the language itself is hard, and there's, from language to language, there are specific things. But once you kind of learn the language, it's now like, what will you do with it? It's not just the computer language too. There's also the language of, algorithms that you use, the language of the data structure, right? And once you learn that, once that's sort of easily as a utility to you, then it becomes how to use that utility to solve problems. And that part need not happen, in a terminal or like in a text editor, and that part could be a lot of pen and paper, could be a lot of whiteboarding.
Yeah. I remember once I was working on a project, and it was the first time ever that I think I was involved in like a software engineering type rather than a data science project. And I was just amazed that I couldn't actually kind of write down any code until I had like an overview of what I wanted to build, and I literally had to write it on paper, like in boxes and just like rough diagrams of this is what, you know, this is like the pipeline or something. So what do you do now? Do you code a lot for work?
So I don't code right now at the moment, which sometimes I miss. I would say that I still do some analysis, but my work diverted a bit in the past year. And what I do is that I'm a data product manager for a team that combines currently backend engineers and machine learning engineers. And I am responsible that they are building products and they are adding parts to the product that actually has value. So I'm coming up with what we should work on, how we can improve it, and just guiding them. And I really enjoy it. I think it's actually a lot of advantage if you know coding, because at the end of the day you are working with people that they do the job. So it's good if you have this like hands-on experience with coding, but at the moment I'm not doing it.
Oh wow.
Which is a bit sad.
Okay, oh that's really cool. It's also nice to see how like paths can lead to from when you first, when you first start coding, you're doing all of the not grunt work, but you're doing
the dirty work
yourself. And now you actually oversee all of that, and because you have an understanding of it, you know exactly what's going on, but you kind of manage it. That's really cool.
Yes, no, and I really enjoy it, and I'm super glad that I could have this opportunity inside my company. That they trusted me enough to do that, because it's kind of a unique role as well, on overseeing all these different profiles and combining them, and make sure that we deliver the best. By the way, what we are working on specifically, to give some more details without going really into the details, is we are building a marketplace that matches workers with jobs. And what we are responsible for is the recommendation and the matching system that actually decides who is a good fit and who is the best fit within those that are good fit for a certain job.
A bit more, like what is it exactly that you do, and you get to code a lot for work?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm splitting my time that I'm doing. I mean, generally I'm currently sort of freelancing. I basically have my own agency now here in Malaga. It's mainly me, right? I'm mainly the person working on all the projects, but sometimes we do work with other freelancers and stuff like that. So it's kind of a mix between agency and just good old freelancing. But I'm splitting my time right now mainly between teaching and coding. So none of my projects are kind of consulting, although that sort of plays into it, because you often are going to work with people that are not super technical. So you will have to explain solutions to them, and you will also have to figure out, like, you know, what does a business actually need. So there is definitely like a consulting aspect to it. But my main part when I work with clients is coding. On the other hand, I also teach, right? So that's, I would say at the moment, or the last few months, was basically a 50-50 split. I usually try to code more than I teach, because I always feel that if you work on real world problems or real world projects, it's way easier to go back into the classroom and teach people. While on the other hand, if you only teach, it's very hard to show real world examples. Even if you teach basic things, it always helps if you're like, oh look, I actually coded something up here, and then the students can see in like a real world project how even like the small bits that we're teaching would go into like a bigger project.